all the endorsements to get where he's gone. But let's talk about another one. You no longer work for House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, but you did do comms for him at one point, and both he and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer have yet to endorse Mumdani. Now, we've been talking about this for a long time on this show, and how they are playing a national politics game, which we understand. Do they need to get on board, or can they essentially sit this one out?
Well, I would think that the long and short of it is something needs to be said. If you're not going to endorse, and say you're not going to endorse, right? But I also think, with respect to Democratic leader Jeffries, he's a smart guy. He's always been one that when everybody's playing checkers, he's playing chess. So he understands the dynamics that are in play here. He also is a veteran of Albany, and he understands the state. And in our state, some of the congressional districts that we're looking to hold on to are in the state of New York. And I think that is also playing kind of a scenario with him, why he is maybe not jumping out at this point. But, the long and short of it is, if they're not going to endorse, and maybe they just need to come out and say, we're not going to endorse, and this is why, But I just think that there's a longer game being played.
I think you're right, but I also think you're right. Like, end the suspense, because I know I talked to my colleagues on the Hill, my reporter colleagues on the Hill, and members are sick of being asked whether they're going to endorse Zohran Mamdani. They're sick of being asked by reporters. I'm sure Chuck Schumer's sick of it. We can see it on his face. This might be a way. Just come out and say, we're not endorsing in this race, or,
And honestly, I would get it. I would get it. Yeah, I would get it. If they could have said,
we all would,
I'm not going to endorse, I'd get it. I'd understand.
Okay, some other news today. We told you yesterday that Zohran Mamdani had pulled out of a planned televised town hall that was going to air on WABC, the local New York City ABC affiliate. This was in response to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. Now that Disney's bringing Kimmel back, Mamdani has said he will reschedule that town hall. Lupe, in your assessment as a comms political professional, did he handle this the right way?
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Perfectly. And let me just tell you, the other person who handled it pretty well is John Oliver, because I watched John Oliver and I was getting ready to go, okay, let me go on and, and unsubscribe to Disney and Hulu. Like, I was getting ready to do it. I think all of that, it was just too much for the Disney execs. They said, we've got to, stop this. I am curious to know how many people unsubscribed to Disney as a result.
Lots. I just did a story on this as well for my other job, but lots. And that's the bottom line. Money talks.
Yeah.
Money talks. I think money was the decision behind, it was the impetus behind the original decision to pull him. And I think money was the impetus behind the decision to put him back on.
Yep.
Okay. What's your assessment of where we are in this race? Is it over? Is it anyone's race? Is there anything Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams or Curtis Lewa could do to beat Mumdani?
Short answer, no. I don't think there is. And really, it is a two-person race. Even with Mayor Adams still in the race, it's still a two-person race. It is, in my opinion, a Mamdani versus Cuomo race. The problem is that, yes, Cuomo is running a different kind of race than he did during the primary, which was lackluster, to say the best of it. But he's probably only one rung higher than lackluster. It's not like he's doing anything very new. So, I would say at this point, it's really up to Mamdani to blow it for himself.
Lose it. Yeah, right. Okay, Lupe, stay right there because I've got lots more questions for you. Battleground NYC, we'll be right back. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. Let's get back to more analysis from the race. Back with me for the bigger picture is Lupe Todd-Medina, political consultant, founder of Effective Media Strategies. Okay, Lupe, I want your take on this. Mumdani's strength seems to me to be his laser focus on affordability, which really matters to like most New Yorkers. But does the freeze the rent message work for every voter in every community?
I mean, he has a lot of messages. The freeze the rent one was the one that really kind of put him front and center. But there's other
Right.
messages that he has out there. I would say that in certain pockets of New York, particularly out of borough, communities of color, freeze the rent doesn't necessarily play as well because he is talking to a specific kind of renter when he's talking about freeze the rent. He's talking about those that are in like the rent stabilized kind of apartments, right?
Mhm.
That's maybe 200,000 units. That's not everybody. And then
Okay.
also he's talking, I think that there's a misconception when it comes to the Black community that the Black community is a poorer community. It is not. The Black community is chock full of upper middle
Yeah.
class, brownstone homeowners,
And landlords, right?
landlords, right? So
Mhm.
when you're talking about freeze the rent, that is
Mhm.
something that doesn't necessarily play well in those communities. So I would say that maybe not freeze the rent doesn't play well in certain communities, but he has other things that he's talking about that
Sure.
play well.
But I'm wondering because okay, typically historically, Andrew Cuomo has done really, really well with Black voters, older Black voters, blue collar voters. I'm wondering if you think Mamdani is in danger with this voting bloc um, on some of these issues in particular. Is he in danger of not getting enough turnout in those kinds of communities that could imperil his campaign, or you don't think so?
Well, what happened during the primary is that because Andrew Cuomo was running to run out the clock, so he wasn't really running to win, he was running to not lose. And then you
Yeah.
had Mandami, who was running to win, you had a lot of people that stayed home, particularly in the Black community. And
Okay.
so now the challenge is he has to take that same energy that he brought with the primary, Mandami, and
Yep.
put it towards this general to make sure that those voters that some of them stayed home, a lot stayed home, those people come out to vote. That's where the challenge is going to be for him. But I
Okay.
think that he does have a good ground game
Oh
where
yeah.
he's able
Yeah.
to pull votes, right? He's able to pull out voters. He's going to get that same crowd that he got during the primary. The challenge now that he has is that he has to pull out those voters that either stayed home or were not
Hmm.
excited with the other choices
Yeah.
in the primary.
Okay. The issue of public safety and crime, those are also top of mind for a lot of New Yorkers. Do you think Mamdani has done enough to assure voters that he doesn't want to defund the police, that he takes crime in New York City seriously and isn't like some national Democrats who are telling voters, you're safe, you're fine?
Well, first of all, crime. I mean, I'll give Eric Adams some credit here. Crime is down in New York City. People are feeling safer in the sense that if you look at the polls, crime is no longer the number one issue. It's affordability, right? So it's not the number one issue anymore. I don't think people are looking at the defund the police thing anymore. I think it's something that Cuomo and others that are running against him or trying to use against him. I don't think that that is playing well. This isn't 2020 anymore or 2021. It's not the main issue. And then I'll also say that where Mamdani is still running a very happy campaign, Cuomo
Hmm.
is still running a negative campaign and it's very dour. People don't
Hmm.
want to stay in the negative. They want to look positive. They want to
Hmm.
feel good about the city. And so I don't think it'll
Hmm.
work.
Okay. Again, stay there because I've got a few more questions for you. Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. We'll be right back. And back with me one more time for the big picture is Lupe Todd-Medina, political consultant, founder of Effective Media Strategies. So, Lupe, let's end with some broad thoughts here. The Democratic Party today, is it in a good position to win back a bunch of seats in the midterms?
I do feel that we are in a good position. I really do feel that. I think I'm very hopeful about that. And I think that we need to have we need the seats, not just so we can get back the House, but also so that we can continue we need to protect our civil rights. We need to protect voting rights. So my hope, I'm very confident. I feel
Okay, but stop. Where does your hope and confidence come from?
Because I still believe in the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party values. Just because there is a more left-leaning part of the party right now that is shining a light on issues, there's still issues that were always important to the Democratic Party. Right?
Okay.
So I feel good as a Democrat. I'm confident.
But there seems to be, because I cover this too, sort of an internecine war in the party, and that's between the far left and the moderates, as you're alluding to, but also between the old guard and newcomers, between those who think that the party should just focus on how awful Trump is, and those who want to come up with a competing agenda. How do Democrats reconcile all of this consternation inside the party to be a strong party come midterms?
I think we all can agree we don't want the Republicans to continue to control everything. There are things that we all agree on, and then there's things that we disagree on, but that's what makes a family. So I feel confident that we're going to get to that point where we can at least agree. We all agree on this one thing, and then let's figure out how do we build better? How do we build stronger? I think that's just typical of families. Families fight.
What should the Democratic Party learn from this race in particular?
That it's no longer party politics as normal. It's not tribal anymore. It's more socially relevant matters that people are concerned about. It's not whether you are a moderate or a liberal or a lefty. It's about social agendas. And we need to address the social agendas, particularly here in New York City, but even, nationally. We need to look at things more on a social level, socioeconomic, and not like tribal politics.
2028 predictions. Who is going to run? Who should run?
You're talking
maybe
president?
Who should not run?
You're talking for president?
Yep.
I mean, I really want us to get through 2026. I don't know.
I get you. But you know that the presidential's around the corner. Every year it's around the corner.
Every year it's around the corner. And I want to make sure by 2026 we still have voting rights. I want to make sure that we still have civil rights. And whoever comes out of 2026 talking about that agenda and talking about ways that we can protect our civil rights, I'm for it. Run for president.
Kamala Harris, as you know, is out with a new book.
Mm-hmm.
She's out talking about it, giving a lot of interviews. It's ruffled some feathers inside the Democratic Party. Should Kamala Harris run for president again?
That's a very good question. And I don't have the answer right now, but I think that if she does run again, she needs to run again on her own principles and not run as somebody's kind of de facto presidential candidate. If she wants to run on your own, run for yourself, and run with your own ideas and agenda.
Yeah, I mean, do you imagine, just based on what we've heard in the book, that the book is setting that up, this cleavage between her and the old administration and some of the old limitations that were on her because of what was going on?
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. And boy, I would love to see that Kamala, right? The Kamala that is Kamala. I would love to see that.
Well, and so maybe she's doing that work now in this book of saying, I am letting go of the Kamala that had to run this way in 2024 so that I can unleash a new Kamala. Do you think voters will give her that opportunity to see her in a new light?
I think that everything is up in the air at this point, but you know what? I'd give her that grace.
Okay. Lupe, thanks so much for joining
Sure.
me and walking us through all of that. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Okay, up next, there's going to be a bunch of housing proposals on the ballot in November in New York City. What are they and how could they help shape the race? That's next. More Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me now to discuss the big three affordable housing questions that are going to be on the ballot in November is Celia Young, senior writer at Brick Underground. Celia, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so Brick Underground, for people who don't know, we've had someone on from Brick Underground before, just deals in the business of housing. And so you're an expert in this. So tell us, first, before we get to the measures themselves, tell us how they almost didn't make it to the ballot. What was the resistance about?
Yeah, so these were pretty controversial, and that's because the New York City Council opposed the measures and moved to try to keep them from appearing on the ballot in November. They claimed that these measures would lessen their power by limiting the role that they have in approving rezonings, and that's what allows affordable developments to move through the city's development process. They also called it a bit of a giveaway for developers. But there's another reason why these measures were so controversial, and it's because they get at removing this, unwritten tradition of member deference. And that's when the city council votes in lockstep with the member that represents the area where a controversial affordable housing development is slated to be placed. And so that power gives local council members a lot of ability to negotiate with developers, and they can use it to gain more affordable units or other amenities like public space, but they can also use it to stall projects. So that was sort of what all of the hubbubaloo was about.
So they wanted, in part, to take power away from voters on these issues by keeping these issues off the ballot.
I think it was more about retaining their own power.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you put it on the ballot, it goes to voters.
Exactly. And, the criticism was more centered around the wording of the proposals. They basically said that the proposals were phrased in this way that makes them sound so wonderful, and that it's more complicated. And it is more complicated, but what a lot of pro-development advocates will tell you is that these proposals will pave the way for housing that the city desperately needs.
Okay, so let's get to the proposals. Let's go through them one at a time. Let's talk proposal one. What does that do to create a fast track to affordable housing?
Yep. So this first proposal would speed up two things: rezonings for affordable housing projects that receive some kind of government financing, and affordable housing developments in the districts that permit the least amount of affordable apartments. And by affordable apartments, just to be clear, I mean rent stabilized apartments where rent increases are capped by a city board. Right now, there's around 1 million rent stabilized apartments in New York City. And so for publicly financed projects, developers would be able to secure rezoning to build new affordable housing projects under these reforms without having to go through the normal process, which they say takes way too long and makes it really expensive
Okay.
to build in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would go through a different city agency.
Okay.
It's called the Board of Standards and Appeals. It already has some zoning authority, and it's made up of at least 3 experts out of the 5 members. And so it would sort of shift a little bit of power for certain developments towards that board. And then the other of this proposal is for the 12 neighborhoods that produce the least amount of affordable housing. And it would create a fast track to build in those neighborhoods. So in those districts, the new process would cut down the amount of time city agencies and community boards have to review a project. And the city council is not going to say. So all of these together would basically speed up building certain affordable housing projects, but they're not going to create crazy tall towers in super low-rise residential areas.
Let's talk about Proposal 2. What will Proposal 2 do to create speedier reviews of modest developments?
Yeah. So this creates like another acronym in the alphabet soup of city procedures. So the old traditional process is called the ULURP, the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. The new process would be called ELURP, an expedited process. That's what the E stands for. Basically, it just cuts down on the amount of time city agencies have to review a project and limits the number of city agencies involved. So in this process, the City Planning Commission, not the City Council, would get the final say. And again, this isn't like for crazy tall developments. This would only impact quote unquote modest rezonings. So projects that would allow like developments up to 45 feet tall or developments that would increase the residential space by 30%. And there's some other stuff you can ELURP for too, including like infrastructure projects and designating city land for affordable housing.
Okay. And what about Proposal 3 and the separate appeals board with a say on affordable projects? How's that going to go?
Yeah, so this is the one that I got the sense was probably more controversial, because what this does is creates a totally separate board that would have the final say on a certain like subset of affordable housing projects. So this board would be made up of the mayor, the city council speaker, the relevant borough president, and it wouldn't have authority over everything. Basically, the board would be able to review affordable housing projects if the city council rejects them or significantly modifies them. So basically, this board could be like, hey, Mr. Developer, your project got rejected. If if it comes to our table, we can say, actually, we're going to revert that back to the city, what the City Planning Commission approved, and we're going to give you the go-ahead to build. So this basically means that this Board of Appeals would have the final say and could, reverse the council decision, which I'm sure the council isn't a fan of.
Okay, so quickly before we have to go, why was this controversial specifically?
Yeah, so this and the other 2 proposals were controversial because they all mean that the city council has less of a say. So in the traditional process, the city council, is one of those agencies that is reviewing projects undergoing ULURP. And the city council usually gets the final say on developments because they can override a mayoral veto. With this Board of Appeals, that changes.